the Diddy all-white party. The message came in at 2 a.m. Diddy's freak-off party, the bed in the woods. Don't miss it. It was cryptic, but I knew what Diddy's parties were like. Legendary, wild, anything could happen. I grabbed my friend, Jake, and we headed out into the woods just outside town, following the eerie glow of lights. We came upon a clearing, and there it was. A massive bed, bigger than any I'd ever seen, draped in white sheets that shimmered under the moonlight. It looked like something out of a fever dream. People were sprawled on it, dancing on it, all under the eerie glow of fire pits scattered around the perimeter. Diddy, the man of the hour, stood at the foot of the bed, a grin plastered on his face. His eyes gleamed with something darker, something asterisk, other asterisk. "You ready for the freak-off?" he shouted, and the crowd cheered. "What's the freak-off?" I asked Jake, but he just laughed. "You'll see." I climbed onto the bed, the sheets cold under my hands. The crowd grew silent. Something in the air shifted. It felt wrong, like the atmosphere itself had thickened. Diddy's voice rang out again. "Close your eyes, relax, let it happen." I was hesitant, but I lay back. As soon as I closed my eyes, I felt it. The bed was alive. Asterisk. It moved under me, like it was breathing, shifting, and pulsing. A coldness crawled up my spine. The sounds of the forest disappeared, replaced by a soft, whispering hum, a voice barely audible. I opened my eyes. The scene had changed. The bed was no longer under the moonlight, but suspended in some dark void, surrounded by fog. The trees were gone. The sky had vanished. I was floating in darkness. Then the figures appeared. At first, they were shadows, barely discernible. But soon, they took shape. Tall, unnaturally thin figures with twisted, elongated limbs. They walked toward the bed, their heads tilted at unnatural angles, mouths too wide to be human. I tried to move, but I couldn't. The sheets had wrapped themselves around me, binding me to the bed. One of the figures leaned in close, its breath cold on my skin. Its eyes were dark, voids of blackness, and it whispered, "You wanted to play. Now you're part of the game." I struggled, my heart pounding. But no matter how hard I fought, the more the bed asterisk pulled asterisk me in. I could see Jake beside me, but his eyes were wide, glassy, like he was already gone. Then I saw Diddy, standing at the foot of the bed, laughing. It wasn't a joyous laugh, but a asterisk, deep asterisk, hollow sound, like he was in on a terrible secret. "This isn't just a party," he said, his voice low. "This is a test. The freak-off isn't about winning. It's about surviving." Suddenly, the figures around us began to asterisk, consume asterisk, the partygoers. One by one, they crawled toward the others, pulling them into the mist, their bodies vanishing into nothingness. It was then that I understood. The bed wasn't just a prop. It was a trap, a gateway to something darker. In a flash of desperation, I pushed myself off the bed, shoving through the mist. I felt it tear at me, the bed's grip trying to pull me back, but I managed to stumble into the clearing. The bed disappeared behind me, as if it had never been there. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in the safety of the town. I tried to call Jake, but his phone went straight to voicemail. No one believed me when I told them what happened. They all thought I was crazy. But I know the truth. I was part of something that night, something far darker than any party should ever be. And if you get an invite to Diddy's freak-off, don't go. Because once you lie down on that bed, you might never get up again. The Diddy freak-off, celebrities and shadows. It started with a simple invite. The freak-off, Diddy, tonight, you in? It was late, around midnight, when I received it. The name Diddy alone sent a rush of curiosity through me. his legendary parties wild, unpredictable, and sometimes downright out of this world. So when my phone buzzed with the message, I didn't hesitate. I was in. I met up with a few friends, and we made our way into the woods, following the faint, pulsing glow of neon lights. The deeper we went, the more surreal the scene became. A massive bed, easily the size of a house, sat in the middle of a clearing. It was surrounded by an odd crowd, an odd mixture of celebrities, influencers, and a few faceless strangers. Everyone was gathered around the bed, sipping champagne and laughing. But there was an eerie stillness in the air, like something other was waiting to happen. Diddy himself was perched on the bed, looking almost godlike under the moonlight, wearing a gold chain and a smirk. His eyes gleamed with that strange, unsettling confidence. "Welcome to the freak-off," he called, his voice booming. "Tonight, we play by different rules." Before anyone could ask what that meant, Diddy snapped his fingers, and the crowd went silent. The music died down, leaving only the rustling of the wind. People began to climb onto the bed, one by one, like they were summoned by some unseen force. I followed, feeling a buzz of adrenaline mixed with a growing sense of unease. As I lay down, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The bed seemed to shift beneath us, as if it was alive. The sheets rippled, and shadows moved darker than the night around us. The temperature dropped. I looked over at a couple of the celebrities nearby, famous faces, men I recognized from movies and TV shows, suddenly lean in toward each other, their eyes locked. And then they kissed. It wasn't just a kiss. It was possessed. Their lips pressed together with unnatural force, tongues twisting in a way that felt less like passion and more like command. The air thickened. There was a sense of hunger in their movements, like they were feeding off each other's energy, off the strange power that had taken hold of the party. Their kiss deepened, and more people around us followed suit, men and women all locking lips with someone else. But it wasn't love. It was demanding. It was insatiable. That's when I saw it. Behind them, in the shadows, something shifted. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall, almost skeletal. Its face was a void, no eyes, no mouth, just a black void. It hovered just beyond the edge of the bed, watching the couples as they kissed, their movements becoming more frantic, more desperate. The figure raised its arm, and a low guttural hum filled the air. It wasn't music anymore. It was a sound, ancient and primal, that rattled my bones. I felt something cold, something unnatural crawling along my spine. It was as if the bed itself was drawing on the energy around it, feeding off our desires, our lust, our fear. The air thickened with an electric tension, and I realized too late that this wasn't a party. It was a rite. The figure reached out, and the bed seemed to pulse with it. The celebrity couple's bodies twisted, the shadows around them growing darker, until it was as though they were being pulled into each other, merging, melding into something grotesque. Their forms began to blur, like a nightmare you can't wake up from. I turned to run, but the bed wouldn't let me go. The sheets wrapped tighter around me, pulling me down, pinning me to the bed. It wasn't the bed itself, it was the force behind it, feeding off the lust and energy in the air. I could hear the whispers now, voices that weren't human, clawing at my mind, urging me to stay, to join in. But I couldn't. I fought with everything I had, my hands tearing at the sheets. I managed to break free, stumbling off the bed and running through the forest, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't know how long I ran, but by the time I found my way back to my car, the sounds of the party were gone. The clearing was empty. There was no bed, no celebrities, no Diddy, just silence. I tried to call my friends, tried to text them, nothing, no response. response. The next day, when I saw the headlines, another bizarre celebrity party that got out of hand, I knew the truth. I had escaped, but not everyone did. The freak-off wasn't just a party. It was a trap, a dark, insidious force waiting to consume everything in its path. And if you ever get invited to one of Diddy's freak-offs, don't go. Because once you lie on that bed, you might find yourself part of the show, whether you want to be or not. The Diddy party, Usher's last dance. It started as a regular invite, a text that read, "The Diddy party, tonight. You coming or what?" It didn't take much to convince me. Diddy's parties were legendary. The kind of nights you told stories about for years. The kind of nights that had rumors swirling around them, rumors I couldn't resist. So I said yes. When I arrived, the mansion was alive, pulsing with music, light, and energy. Celebrities filled every corner, movie stars, athletes, influencers, but there was something off in the air. Something heavier than just champagne and expensive cologne. The house had a strange feel, like it had been standing for centuries, built on something ancient, something wrong. I found my way through the crowds to the main room, where Diddy himself was holding court. His smile was wide, predatory. "Welcome, welcome," he said, his voice a smooth, dangerous purr. "Tonight, we dance. Tonight, we let go." As the music played, I caught sight of Usher in the crowd, looking as polished and confident as ever. But there was a strange look in his eyes, like he was somewhere else. Like he didn't want to be here, but couldn't leave. The night blurred after that. Drinks flowed, bodies swayed, but the atmosphere felt thick, like something was waiting to happen. Then, around midnight, the music cut off abruptly. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at Diddy. He was standing still, his eyes locked on Usher across the room. "Time for the last dance," Diddy announced, his voice echoing through the stillness. Usher's face tightened. "Diddy, he started, but Diddy's gaze was unblinking, unwavering. "You know the rules, Usher." The crowd fell back, clearing a path. Usher hesitated, his body stiff, as though his legs weren't entirely his own. He moved toward the center of the room, and I could see that his hands were trembling. The lights dimmed, leaving only a spotlight on him. A chill ran down my spine. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, the music started, low, slow, almost hypnotic. Usher began to move, but it wasn't his usual smooth, confident step. His movements were jerky, unnatural, as though his body was being controlled asterisk. The room started to close in on him, the crowd circling like wolves around prey. Then Diddy's voice cut through the music. "The dance. It's not just about rhythm," he said, and his voice was no longer playful. It was dark, commanding. "It's about surrendering. Let it take you." Usher's eyes widened as if he had no control over what was happening. His body began to twist unnaturally, his face contorted, and I could hear a faint whisper in the air, a chant, coming from nowhere, everywhere. The room seemed to pulse with it. People stood, motionless, watching Usher's every move, every step, as though they were all hypnotized by something they couldn't see. Usher's body jerked again, his muscles straining against his will. He reached up, and for a second his hands, his fingers seemed to stretch longer, thinner, as if something was forcing him to move. He cried out, but it wasn't his voice. It was deeper, distorted. The crowd's eyes gleamed in unison, and I felt a cold grip on my chest. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't obey. My body was frozen, caught in the same trance. Usher collapsed to his knees in the center of the room, his breathing heavy and ragged, his body shaking violently. He looked up at Diddy, his face a mask of terror, his eyes pleading. "Diddy, please stop," he gasped. But Diddy stepped closer, his smile colder now. "It's already too late, Usher. You're mine." Then, in a flash of light, Usher screamed, and the room plunged into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, Usher was gone. The crowd stood still, silent, like nothing had happened. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, trying to process what I had just witnessed. But I could feel it, the change. The air was thick with something ancient, something hungry. I rushed to the exit, desperate to leave, but I wasn't alone. Diddy stood in front of the door, his grin widening. "Leaving already?" he asked. "The party's just begun." I didn't answer. I shoved past him, pushing through the crowd, ignoring the cold stares of the people around me. I didn't stop running until I was in my car, speeding away from that mansion, the echoes of Usher's scream still ringing in my ears. I tried to reach out to others who'd been at the party, but no one answered. The media didn't report anything unusual. And Usher, he vanished. No one mentioned him again, not a single word, but I knew what I saw. Diddy's parties weren't just about music, fame, or luxury. They were about something darker, something much darker. And if you ever get an invite to one of his events, don't go. Because once you're in, you will never leave. Not all, anyway. And if Usher couldn't escape, what chance did I have? The Diddy party, Fabulous never showed. This was the type of invite you didn't normally get. Diddy's party, the stuff of legends, the kind of night that left your jaw on the floor, and your stories etched in the minds of everyone who heard them. But this one had a twist. I got the message at 11:45 p.m. "Tonight, get dressed, bitch, we going out." I didn't even think. I was dressed and out the door, heading to Diddy's mansion. When I arrived, the usual mix of celebrities and influencers were already buzzing around, drinks in hand, dressed to the nines. The air smelled of expensive cologne and champagne. But there was something off. Everyone was looking towards the door, waiting for someone. "Where's Fab?" I overheard. I turned to see a group of people murmuring, their eyes flicking back and forth toward the entrance. There was a strange anticipation in the air, like the party wouldn't truly begin until Fabulous showed up. I didn't get it at first. Fabulous? Why him? But as I made my way deeper into the house, I saw Diddy. He was smiling, shaking hands with everyone, but his eyes kept darting to the door every few seconds. He looked desperate. "Yo, what's going on with Fab?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but I could tell there was tension in his voice. "Fabulous," Diddy repeated, his grin barely masking the frustration. "He's coming. Tonight, he's coming. And when he does, it's going to be perfect." Perfect? What did he mean by that? I didn't have time to ask. Suddenly, the music stopped. Complete silence. Everyone turned towards Diddy. "All right, listen up," Diddy's voice boomed as he took the center of the room. His eyes were wide, a little frantic. "Fabulous is supposed to be here. He's supposed to complete this party. But if he doesn't show, well, you know what happens." I felt a chill run through me. People started whispering, but there was an edge in their voices, a mix of excitement and fear. Before anyone could react, the doors burst open. But it wasn't Fabulous who stepped inside. The man was tall, wearing a sharp suit, but his face was obscured by shadows. His eyes, they glowed, not like a reflection of the lights, but an unnatural glow, a cold, unnatural blue. The room seemed to suck in its breath. Diddy's expression faltered, then twisted into something close to fear. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. The man didn't answer right away. He just stood there, looking around, then finally spoke, his voice low and smooth like oil. he was hoping Fabulous would appear at any moment. But the figure didn't leave. Instead, he moved closer. "I'm not who you want," the man said, his voice sending a chill down my spine. "But I'm what you'll get." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The music came back on, but it wasn't the same. It was distorted, warped, like the very sound itself was wrong. The walls seemed to pulse with an energy I couldn't explain. People around me began to sway, their movements jerky, unnatural. It was like they were all caught in some kind of trance. I turned back to see Diddy, his eyes wide now, his voice a whisper. No, this can't be happening." I didn't know what was happening, but I could feel it. Something was wrong. This wasn't just a party anymore. It was something else. The figure stepped toward Diddy, who was now frozen in place. "You wanted him. You thought you could control him," the man said, his voice dripping with venom. "But you don't get to call the shots. Not tonight. Not ever." The air felt heavy, and the ground beneath me seemed to tremble. The music grew louder but distorted, like it was becoming a pulse, a heartbeat that wasn't human. The man reached out toward Diddy, and for a split second, I saw Diddy's expression shift. Fear, desperation. But there was nothing he could do. The lights flickered one last time. The figure disappeared. The music stopped. The house was silent again. For a moment, I thought it was over. But when the lights came back on, Diddy was gone. No one said a word. People started moving again, but it was different. They moved like they weren't quite there, like they were sleepwalking, their faces blank, their eyes hollow. Fabulous never showed up, and no one ever spoke of it again. The party was forgotten. The next day, it was like it had never happened. No photos, no posts, just an empty feeling lingering in the air. A feeling that Diddy had called for something he couldn't control. And it had answered. That night, I realized something. Some things, some people are better left uninvited. And next time I get that invite, I'm dealing with it. Because you might not just get what you expect. You might get something that'll haunt you forever. The Diddy party, lost in the lights. It was supposed to be the night of my life. Diddy's invited came via text. A single line. "Let's party. Come through." Everyone said it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to be part of something unforgettable. The kind of party that made your career. I didn't hesitate. I arrived at the mansion just after midnight, my heart pounding with excitement. The house was enormous, glowing in the dark, like a beacon of wealth and power. The music blasted from every room, filling the air with a pulsing energy. But something felt off. People were everywhere, but there was a strange emptiness in their eyes, like they weren't really there. The moment I walked in, I felt the temperature drop. I brushed it off, though too many people, too much alcohol. Diddy was in the center of it all, surrounded by an entourage laughing and shaking hands. But there was something in his eyes, something that didn't match the smile plastered on his face. It was like he was waiting for something. The night went on, but the deeper I got into the party, the stranger it became. The music felt too loud, the lights too bright. I could barely keep my thoughts together. I wandered into a back hallway, desperate for a break from the chaos. And that's when I saw her. A woman, standing alone in front of a full-length mirror. She was wearing a stunning dress, her hair perfectly styled, but she was staring at her reflection like she didn't recognize herself. She seemed lost, confused. I almost went up to her, but before I could, the lights flickered, and she vanished. I felt a chill, like something was tugging at the back of my mind. I turned around and saw Diddy standing in the hallway. He was watching me. He stepped forward, his smile back in place, but there was something unnerving in the way his eyes followed me. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice too smooth, like he already knew the answer. I nodded, trying to play it cool, but I could feel my pulse quicken. I didn't want to stay in the hallway any longer, so I tried to move past him. "Don't wander too far," he warned. "You don't want to get lost here." I laughed nervously, but his words lingered like a warning. I made my way back to the main room, but the atmosphere had changed. The people were still there, but they were off. The laughter sounded hollow, the smiles too wide. No one seemed real. The music felt more like a pulse, a heartbeat, but not of life, something darker. I needed to get out of there. As I headed toward the door, the lights flickered again, and the floor seemed to shift beneath me. The shadows stretched and twisted, like they were reaching for me. Suddenly the crowd parted, and there, standing in the center of the room, was the woman I'd seen earlier. But now, she wasn't standing still. She was moving, gliding toward me, her eyes locked on mine. And that's when I realized she wasn't the only one. Everyone in the room was watching me, their eyes trained on me like I was the last person in the world. "Are you lost?" the woman asked, her voice cold, distant. "They all are." Before I could respond, the music stopped. The air grew thick. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls bending, warping. My heart raced, and I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The woman reached out, her cold hand grazing my arm, and for a moment, I felt like I was sinking into the floor. "You should have never come," she whispered, her voice fading. In that moment, everything snapped. The lights burst back on, and the crowd resumed, as if nothing had happened. But they weren't the same. Their faces were blank, their smiles stretching unnaturally wide. The woman was gone, and Diddy, he was still in the center of the room, smiling. But his eyes locked on me, too aware, too knowing. I didn't wait to find out what happened next. I bolted for the door, my heart pounding in my ears. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a slap, and I realized I hadn't just been at a party. I had been somewhere else, somewhere I shouldn't have been. I drove home in a daze, but every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel it. The cold grip of that woman's hand on my arm, the weight of Diddy's eyes on me, and the whispers that followed me out the door. I didn't tell anyone about what happened, but I know the truth. People go to Diddy's parties, but not everyone comes back. Some of us are left behind, lost in the lights, and some of us never leave. The Diddy party, the shadow in the hallway. I didn't want to go, I really didn't. But when Diddy sends you an invite, when he personally asks you to show up, how could you say no? So I put on my best suit, stepped into my car, and drove to the mansion. The moment I pulled up, I could feel it, the energy. The house was massive, the front door wide open, people spilling out like they were born to be here. Inside, the place was alive, music thumping, lights flashing, people everywhere, all lost in the night. But there was something strange about the atmosphere. The crowd was too perfect, too polished. Everyone was smiling, laughing, but their eyes empty. It felt like they weren't even present, just playing a role. I shook it off, figuring I was just overthinking it. It was Diddy's party, after all. Who wouldn't be on edge? But then I saw him. Diddy, at the center of it all. He was surrounded by people, of course, but there was something off. He wasn't just in control of the room. It was like he was controlling everything, every conversation, every laugh, every drink. The whole space seemed to bend around him. I pushed through the crowd, trying to enjoy myself, but the feeling of being watched, of being used, crept up on me again. I made my way to the back of the house, hoping for a quieter spot. That's when I found the hallway. It was tucked away from the main party, dimly lit, and almost eerily silent. The lights flickered a little, like the house was breathing, like it had its own heartbeat. And then I saw it at the end of the hall, a door cracked open. It wasn't part of the plan, but curiosity got the best of me. I stepped forward. As soon as I walked into the room, the air shifted. It was a study, old leather chairs, bookshelves, and a desk with papers scattered across it. But what caught my eye was the mirror. It was massive, bordering on surreal. The frame was carved in intricate designs, dark and weathered. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Something about the reflection didn't feel right. At first, it was just me standing there, staring back. But as I kept looking, I started to notice shadows behind me. In the reflection, people that weren't there in the room with me. They stood still, watching, their faces expressionless, like statues. I turned around, but the room was empty. I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. What the hell was going on? I turned back to the mirror, but now the shadows were closer. I could make out shapes. One figure, tall and thin, was standing right behind me in the reflection, its eyes glowing faintly red. I spun around, heart racing, but nothing was there. Just the quiet hum of the house in the distance. A soft laugh echoed from the doorway. I froze. Standing in the threshold was Diddy. His usual confidence was gone. His eyes were different, empty, hollow, like he was no longer in control of anything. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice strangely distant. "Some doors shouldn't be opened." I wanted to say something, but the words caught in my throat. The shadows in the mirror were moving now, their forms twitching and flickering, like they were asterisk alive, asterisk, their eyes following me as I backed away. Diddy stepped further into the room, his presence too strong, too heavy. "You wanted to be the part of something big, right?" he said, his voice dripping with something cold. "Well, now you are. This is what happens to those who get too close. You lose yourself. You never really leave." The shadows started to move again, this time pulling toward me. I could feel the mirror pulling me in, dragging me. I tried to move, but it felt like I was glued to the spot.